Hey guys, welcome to the master class on how the back panel of a jacket should fit. As I covered in the overview video, we have Fabrizio's loudest jacket possible out of his wardrobe. Is that new?
Yes,
Brand new jacket. And where's it from?
Solbiati.
Nice Solbiati jacket for Fabrizio. For this, what we're gonna cover is how the back panel of a jacket should fit correctly, and then also what measurements go in to making that fit correctly, including the comfort creases, which is a very important thing to understand. Those are creases that are expected in the back panel, and it's not an error of tailoring whatsoever. Because sometimes you'll get different clients. Have you ever had a client kind of point them out and say that's wrong?
Every single time.
All right, lots of people saying it for Fabrizio. I feel bad for your fittings. The comfort creases and why those are correct creases back there and not an error in tailoring or measuring or anything like that. So let's jump right into it. Fabrizio, if you turn around, unfortunately you have to stare at the wall a little bit during this segment. Fabrizio has a great fitting jacket in the back panel. Can you step forward just a little bit? Yeah, perfect. Has a great fitting jacket in the actual back panel here. It's clean across the upper chest, the stomach here, and the actual seat. So for these three to be fitting well and correctly, there's a few things that go into them. And there's kind of two different camps here. There's the obvious measurements, which I'll start off with, and then there's the bigger measurements that really are the levers that really affect the actual fits up here most greatly throughout the back panel. For this, the obvious measurements are, we want a correct, width of the back shoulder. If the shoulders are too wide, then you'll see a lot of, breakdown of the fabric in the blades up here. Chest, stomach, seat, we want all those circumferences taken correctly when we measure, and them to be nice and form-fitting. Remember, I keep saying that. It's a strict way that we want it to fit. Form-fitting throughout the torso and the circumferences is not too tight, not too loose. That's very, very serious in the way I say it, and we want to push it that way for any of our clients that ask for something to be, opened up way too much or taken in way too tightly. Keep your clients in the guardrails of not too tight, not too loose, because if we ever go too loose or too tight throughout these three sections, then a lot of other problems will start to sprout up. So those are the pretty obvious points. The more consequential kind of levers that really greatly affect and shake kind of whether or not the back panel fits well from top to bottom here throughout the upper chest, stomach, and seat is first the actual shoulder hunchness, the actual posture of the shoulder, and then second is the actual vertical posture of the client. Both are very, very different, and they both can have pretty drastic consequences on whether the back panel fits well or if it doesn't. So first, the actual hunchness of the shoulders. That is affected and measured by a correct back shoulder measurement and a correct front shoulder measurement. If you want to learn more about how to take those correctly, jump over to the master class of the actual lapels, where I go pretty in depth on how the actual front shoulder and back shoulder should be taken correctly. Something that is one of the most consequential set of measurements. Here, I'm going to discuss another reason why it's so consequential. So we really want to get the shoulder posture correct. How do the shoulders actually sit on the client themselves? Fabrizio has a slightly hunched shoulder posture, and his actual jacket has been constructed that way, and it counts for it. And you can see that in just how nice and clean it is across the upper back here. If Fabrizio had an even more hunched shoulder posture, so if you really hunch for me, Fabrizio, it's clean on this because this is a very kind of like woolen, almost blanket fabric, but you would see on any pulling here for someone who doesn't have a jacket constructed for a hunched posture, but they themselves have a hunched posture, that's when you get horizontal lines that pull across here, whether it's just slightly in the center seam here or more drastically across the upper back. When we see that, that is when we know that the shoulder posture is off and the shoulder posture that instructions and measurements that we gave to the tailors were not as correct as we needed them to be to account for the actual shoulder posture of the client. So we don't want to see that horizontal pulling back here. Now, if the opposite happens with shoulder posture, if Fabrice were to have a more erect posture than how the garment was constructed or how you measured the garment to be constructed, then with Fabrice's drastic example here of erect shoulders, you get vertical lines back here. Vertical lines means excess fabric back here. This is a pretty drastic example of Fabrizio holding this, but sometimes it can just be a little less drastic, so a little more forward, to where it's just a little bit of extra looseness throughout the back here. Now, how to fix these are in the alteration guide, so jump over there if you want to learn more about how to clean these up after the fact. But for the actual how this should fit as a clean garment, we want to make sure that the actual shoulder posture that we measure, so we take the accurate and correct back shoulder and front shoulder measurement, matches exactly how the actual posture is of our client. So then we construct it correctly, because when we don't, we see those two, either pulling back here in horizontal lines or looseness in the actual vertical lines. Now, let's move down to the actual middle part. You can relax your breaths. Thank you. Now, let's go into the actual midsection here. One of the biggest things that affects this is the actual vertical posture. So this is very different than the shoulder posture. Shoulder posture is just hunchness of shoulders, how hunched or erect they are. Vertical posture has to do with the actual spine and how back someone's spine is, or how forward their vertical posture is. Some people have a more vertical kind of forward stance like this. Other people have a more backward vertical posture. Sometimes that's just a byproduct of a more erect chest and them actually pulling their vertical posture back. When that happens, and Fabrice, if you could kind of pivot at your hip and then just swing back, you can see right here we get now extra fabric back here when his vertical posture is more back than how the garment was constructed. When we take a correct shoulder to waist and nape to waist actual measurement, which is something we're more and more taking and I'm training to everyone, those are two measurements that the difference between them accurately pinpoints what the vertical posture is, whether you're more forward or back. So if the actual vertical posture measurements that we take are more vertical posture backward, and Fabrizio is more backward like this, that causes this excess billowing here. What the tailors will do then is that they will adjust the overall pattern. They'll still do the length that you measured, the back jacket length, but they'll adjust the overall pattern to kind of take this excess fabric out, so it still comes down to the length that you want, but it will clean this up a little bit in this big billowing back here. And it'll redistribute this a bit to the front where, again, if we're backwards like this, so Fabrizio, if we turn this way, if you're backwards like this, you obviously need the actual overall fabric here in the back jacket to be a little manipulated in the pattern, so you're taking out this billowiness here, and then redistributed to the front where you're obviously bringing up the jacket in the front, and you need it to kind of sit better on the front jacket aspect of the garment. So the exact same happens when you're way too forward here. Again, it never really results in the back panel necessarily being compromised, but just the opposite can be true on not accurately measuring with a shoulder to waist and nape to waist measurement the actual vertical posture of someone being a forward vertical posture. That more so affects the front part of the jacket than anything else. So back to the back panel here. Thanks, Fabrizio. Mm-hmm. The last piece we're going to go through is the actual seat of the jacket. This is something that we want for the seat. It gives the same tell as the actual upper shoulder, the upper back here that we just discussed. if there are vertical lines in here, so if Fabrizio had a lot more fabric back here, then we'd have big vertical lines, and that would mean it's too big in the actual back panel here. And then if we had horizontal lines, that means it's too tight back here. And usually if it's too tight, the actual vents will flare a bit as well with it as a tell. So we want to see that nice and clean, apply the same kind of MO of the upper chest as back here. So to recap everything there for this, for the clean actual back panel here, again, this is different than the actual overall circumference of the torso and the chest and the stomach and the actual seat. Just the back panel, which is altered only by the center seam here. The center seam is the only thing that can help you in cleaning up little stuff throughout the upper chest, the stomach, and the seat. The side seams can't help you really at all back here. That, to summarize everything, we want to make sure the obvious measurements are taken care of. So we have a correct back shoulder width, we have a correct chest, stomach, and seat throughout those measurements. But beyond that, it's really the posture pieces that greatly affect an ill fit or a correct fit and make or break it on the back panel. So that's the shoulder posture of how hunched or erect your shoulders are, and the vertical posture of how normal vertical posture backward or vertical posture forward that you had, which is pinpointed by the shoulder to waist measurement and the nape to waist measurement, something we're going to be taking more and more of in the company. So thank you, Fabrizio. I appreciate it, being the mannequin again. For this, something that's really important to, last point to know, I'm sure Fabrizio, you've seen a lot, please chime in if you have any comments on it, is Fabrizio's jacket here I chose specifically because it's a nice kind of like, thicker, good material, even though it's a year-round or almost more of a summer kind of jacket look to it. Any kind of more rigid or thicker fabric, so a certain type of fabric or a weight that is over 280 grams will come in and will sit more cleanly on the back panel and other parts of the garment. Know that your back panel and anything else for that matter will be far more sensitive to slight wrinkles here and there if you have a very lightweight fabric. Have you ever experienced that? Seersuckers, linens. So be vigilant about that in knowing that as you really kind of lock in and master these principles of everything we're discussing in these master classes and overviews, know that there's a big difference between a more rigid, sturdy, year-round or woolen winter fabric versus an actual summer weight or more linen seersucker fabric that's gonna just show a lot more kind of wrinkles. That doesn't mean that the back panel in this instance of what we're talking about is incorrect if it shows a few of those wrinkles. Really look at it and just make a good judgment call before you decide to start altering left and right, because it's going to be really, it's going to be like chasing a ghost at that point to try to just clean up every little wrinkle on those really more lightweight seersucker and linen fabrics. Cool. That's everything on the back panel. Really jump over in that masterclass video of lapels to look over specifically the correct way to measure and look over the actual shoulder posture. It's a great thing that usually wreaks havoc or makes or breaks a fit in the upper back of the back panel. And reach out to myself or Fabrizio if you have any questions. I know a lot, he's seen a lot, and we're happy to help out with anything. For myself, if you have any photos of any previous fits where you've seen this happen before on the back panel, please send them to me. I'm happy to jump into a one-on-one call or to discuss it over email to talk about what might have been going on at that point. So we can really use one of your previous clients as a live example to make you that much sharper for anything moving forward, whether it's measurement-wise or alteration-wise. Enjoy, guys, and I hope this helped. That's it for here.